My name's Michael Dunn. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived on this land longer than most folks in my county have been alive. It's not much, 180 acres just outside of Williston, North Dakota, but it's mine. At least, it used to be. I've been a farmer all my life, not because it was profitable, not because I dreamed of it as a boy. It was just what you did in my family. You worked the land, fixed what broke, and paid what was owed. No questions, no complaints. That's what being a man meant, at least the way my father taught me. 6 years ago, my wife Mary died. Cancer. It started in her bones and didn't stop. Took her in 4 months. One day she was weeding the front garden, and by Christmas she was buried under the frost. I still remember her hands, always warm, always moving. She didn't stop moving until her body forced her to. After the funeral, people kept saying how strong I was. That word again. Strong. Like not falling apart is a badge of honor. Like waking up in an empty bed and not screaming into the sheets is a sign of character. But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow. Still, I got up every morning, fed the cattle, checked the fence lines, started the old red case tractor and plowed the same fields I'd plowed for 30 years. When the loneliness got loud, I just worked harder. Fix the barn roof, stack more wood, go clean out the gutters. Because if you keep your hands busy, maybe your heart will stay quiet. I've got 3 grown kids. Rebecca lives in Des Moines with her husband and 2 little ones. John, my oldest, is out in Colorado, works some kind of tech job, I can never quite follow. Samuel, my youngest, never moved far. He's 2 towns over with a mortgage and a drinking problem no one wants to admit. After Mary passed, they were around a lot. Brought food. Sat on the porch with me. Told me I should come visit more. That lasted about 6 months. Then the calls got shorter. The visits farther apart. But the requests. Those never stopped. At first, it was little things. Rebecca needed help with a down payment. Then John called, his startup had a rough quarter, and he was behind on rent. Sam always needed something. New transmission. Bail money once. Then it was credit card debt. Then it was, just a little help to get back on my feet. I gave every time. Because that's what dads do, right? You carry the weight. Even if your knees are giving out. By last year, I'd given out more than I kept. Sold off one of the tractors. Let go of 3 of my seasonal guys. I canceled the fall trip Mary and I used to take every year. But I never complained. I kept telling myself, it's just for now. They'll get back on their feet. They just need time. Then came this fall. Dry weather. Late frost. Hard soil. I hitched up the case and headed out like I always did. Same field. Same routine. But halfway through the first pass, the whole machine shuddered, coughed, and died. I tried everything. Replaced hoses. Cleaned out filters. Bypassed the ignition. Nothing. I finally had it towed to a mechanic I trusted. 2 days later, he called with the damage, full transmission replacement, cracked head gasket, and something electrical he couldn't even identify yet. $14,000. Minimum. I remember sitting on the porch that night, watching the last of the sun fall behind the fields. The air smelled like dry leaves and dust. I dialed John first. Told him plain and honest, I needed help. Not a handout. Just some temporary support. Maybe a short-term loan between the 3 of them. I said it steady, like a man swallowing his pride slow. John paused. Then said, Dad, we're kind of tight right now. You've always figured things out before. I'm sure you'll manage. That was it. No, are you okay? No, do you need anything else? Just that quiet, easy shrug that grown children give when they think their father's invincible. I hung up without another word. That's when something inside me cracked, not loud like thunder, just a slow, painful shift. A realization. I had spent years holding everyone else together. But the second I asked for help, I became invisible. I didn't sleep much that night. After John hung up, I just sat there in the dark, on that worn wooden bench Mary and I built one summer before the kids were grown. The seat still creaked on the left side where she used to lean. Funny the things you remember. I kept staring at the horizon, even after the sky had gone pitch black. You sit with the silence long enough, you start to hear things. Old voices. Old decisions. All the things you said yes to without thinking twice. I pulled out an old yellow notebook from the kitchen drawer. The one I used to jot down supply orders or calf births. But this time I flipped to a clean page and wrote one word at the top. What I've paid. I started listing. $12,000 for Rebecca's down payment. $6,500 to John when his app idea failed. $9,800 for Sam's DUI attorney and rehab. $2,300 when Rebecca's oldest needed dental surgery. $5,000 for John's emergency when his car got repoed. $400 here, $250 there, groceries, Christmas gifts, plane tickets, deposits. It went on. I had to flip the page. Then another. By the end of it, I realized I'd given away over $60,000 in the last 5 years alone. That's not counting the land I let Sam work for free. Or the bills I covered quietly when Rebecca said her power got shut off. I'd sold off farm equipment, dipped into retirement, canceled vacations, put off my own dental work for 3 years just so my grandson could get braces. And I never complained. Not once. Because somewhere in my bones, I believed that's what love was supposed to look like. You give. You show up. You stay standing, even when it gets hard. But now I was the one needing help. And they weren't even pretending. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our last few messages. Not a single, "How are you, Dad?" Just reminders, invoices, rushed thank yous. I called Sam next. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave one. Then I tried Rebecca. She answered cheerfully, like she hadn't seen the missed call. "Hey Dad. Sorry, kids are running wild today. What's up?" I told her the truth. Word for word. Tractors down. Harvests in jeopardy. I'm short on cash. Any way she and her brothers could pitch in a little? There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh Dad, that's really tough. But Ryan just started his new job, and we're trying to pay off the couch. Maybe check in with John." I wanted to ask her if she hurt herself. I wanted to scream, "I'm your father, not a damn appliance." But instead, I said, "Okay. Take care." That was it. No offers. No follow-up. Just silence, again. I set the phone down and stared at the old clock on the mantel. The one Mary found at a garage sale for $5 and insisted we clean up together. I used to love its tick. But that night, it just felt loud. Heavy. That was the moment it really hit me. They don't love me. They love what I do for them. They love the bills paid, the trucks fixed, the birthday checks, the quiet reliability of knowing I'll always pick up the phone when things fall apart. But me? The man underneath all that? He doesn't exist to them unless he's useful. I know that sounds dramatic. Hell, even now I question myself. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe I'm too proud. But deep down, in a place I usually keep buried, I knew the truth. When Mary died, I lost my partner. And somewhere along the way, I let myself become the family's engine. And like any engine, I wasn't supposed to stop. Just run. Until something broke. Well, it finally did. The thing about patterns is, you don't usually see them when you're standing inside them. You call it love. You call it family. You tell yourself, that's just how it is. But sitting alone in that farmhouse, notebook in my lap, I started seeing it clearly for the first time. It didn't start with the broken tractor. It didn't even start when Mary passed. It started a long time ago, when I said yes the first time. Rebecca was 18, senior year of high school. She had her heart set on a private college back east, tuition through the roof, even with scholarships. I sat down with her and Mary one night at the kitchen table, stacks of brochures between us. I remember Mary looked worried. I looked at my daughter's face, hopeful, certain. Mary asked, "How are we going to swing this?" I said, "We'll figure it out." That meant refinancing the farm, taking a second mortgage, skipping the new combine we needed that year. But I did it. Because I wanted Rebecca to feel the world open up to her. Because my dad never helped me, and I swore I'd be different. Then John. He wanted to start a company. Had this big idea about custom software for small businesses. All buzzwords and enthusiasm. Came to me with a slideshow on a tablet and a smile like he already knew I'd say yes. I asked him, "You got a plan for if it doesn't work out?" He said, "You believe in me, don't you, Dad?" I wrote the check. 20 grand. It lasted 8 months. He never mentioned it again. Sam was different. Always had a wild streak. Sensitive. Sweet when he wanted to be. Lost when he wasn't. First it was car trouble. Then rent. Then some trouble with a girl that ended in a court hearing I had to sit through in a dusty suit while he stared at the floor. Each time he called, I sent what I could. Told myself, this will help him turn it around. He just needs one more chance. I told myself that for 13 years. After Mary died, I thought maybe things would shift. Maybe the kids would worry about me a little. Maybe they'd come around more often. Pick up some of the load. Not even big things, just help fixing the roof, maybe mow the grass without me asking. But what I got instead were more texts that started with, "Hey Dad, quick question." I tried to bring it up once. Rebecca had come up for Thanksgiving with the kids, and I'd made the full meal myself, turkey, stuffing, pies, the works. My knees were killing me. I was so tired I could barely chew. After dinner, she sat scrolling her phone while the kids dumped cranberry sauce on the dog. I said, "You know, it'd be nice to have a little help around here sometimes." She looked up and smiled, that rehearsed kind of smile people give when they're about to sidestep a real question. "You're just so good at this stuff, Dad. Honestly, I don't know how you do it." And then she went right back to her phone. I laughed it off then. But it sat in my gut like a stone. You see, they'd built this whole image of me, dependable, unshakable, always ready dad. And I played my part. Every single time. Because I wanted them to feel safe. Wanted to be the kind of father I never had. But there's a difference between being dependable and being used. There's a line between love and obligation. And I couldn't remember the last time anyone crossed that line toward me. Mary used to. She saw me. The man, not the machine. She'd wrap her arms around me when I came in from a long day and whisper, "You don't always have to be strong, you know." And I believed her. But now, she was gone. And I was just a man on a bench, holding a notebook full of numbers that felt like receipts for a life nobody ever paid back. It was the first Saturday in October when my body gave out. I woke up stiff. Not just the usual farm aches, this was deep, bone deep. My back locked halfway through tying my boots, and when I stood up, my vision tunneled. I shook it off. Thought maybe I was dehydrated. Too much work, not enough sleep. Again. There were chores to do, always were. The east barn roof had been leaking since spring, and I hadn't gotten around to patching it. I told myself I'd fix it that day. No more putting it off. I loaded the toolbox into the wheelbarrow and made my way out, one slow step at a time. It was chilly. Wind coming in low and sharp across the fields, like it was trying to remind me winter wasn't far off. I stepped inside the barn, the smell of old hay and engine oil heavy in the air. That scent used to feel like home. That day, it felt like pressure. Like the walls were leaning in. I made it halfway up the ladder before the world went sideways. One moment, I was gripping the rung, reaching for the next board. The next, I was on the ground, flat on my back, looking up at the rafters. I don't remember the fall. Just the thud, and then that stillness, like the air itself stopped moving. My chest tightened. My left arm was numb. For a split second, I thought, this is it. And then a worse thought, if I die here, it'll take days for anyone to notice. That hit harder than the fall. I crawled back to the house, literally. On my hands and knees like a dog. By the time I reached the kitchen, I was soaked in sweat, shivering. I sat against the fridge and pulled my phone out with shaking hands. First, I called Sam. Straight to voicemail. Again. Then John. It rang 6 times before cutting off. Rebecca picked up. Thank God. Hey Dad, what's up? Her voice was light, distracted. I heard her youngest crying in the background. I fell, I said. In the barn. I think I hit my head. I'm not sure if I need an ambulance or just a ride. There was silence. Just the baby crying. She said, "Oh, shoot. Well, Ryan took the car. I don't really have a way to get there right now. Can you call someone else?" There was no one else. I ended the call. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't even feel angry. Just cold. Cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I drove myself to the emergency room. Halfway there, I had to pull over and throw up. My vision blurred the whole way, and I kept blinking to stay conscious. At one point I thought, this is how people die, not from the injury, but from the waiting. At the hospital, they ran tests. Mild concussion, fractured rib, dehydration. They patched me up, told me to rest for a few days. Gave me painkillers I didn't want and sent me on my way. I sat in that little curtained-off room and stared at my phone. Not a single new message. Not one callback. Nobody was coming. I thought of Mary then. The way she used to sit with me in waiting rooms, rubbing circles on my knee with her thumb. Not saying much. Just being there. She would have come without me even asking. She would have brought soup. She would have made me laugh, even while I was hurting. I sat in that hospital gown, smelling like dust and iodine, and I realized, my family wasn't just busy. They were absent. Entirely. Willfully. And yet, I had never missed a birthday. Never said no to a favor. Never let them fall. Now that it was me who fell, all I got was voicemail. I didn't go home right away. After they cleared me to leave the hospital, I sat in the parking lot for maybe an hour, just watching the wind whip through the flag out front. I couldn't bring myself to turn the ignition. Not because I was in pain, though I was, but because I knew exactly what I was going home to: nothing. No one waiting at the kitchen table. No folded blanket on the couch. No soup on the stove. No Mary. Just a cold, quiet farmhouse where even the floors creaked like they were tired of me. When I finally did walk through the door, it was like stepping into someone else's life. Mine had always been loud, tractors rumbling, dogs barking, Mary humming in the next room. But that night, the only sound was the old fridge, groaning like it didn't want to keep going either. I sat down in my recliner, the one with the worn arms and the indent where my shoulder fits, and pulled out my phone. Still nothing. Not a single text from Sam. Not a call from John. No message from Rebecca. They all knew where I was. I'd told them. But the silence? That was deliberate. See, it's one thing when people are too busy to reach out. You can forgive that. Life gets hectic. But when you're hurt, really hurt, and they stay silent, that's not forgetfulness. That's a decision. And they'd made it loud and clear. I tried to sleep that night, but the pain in my ribs kept me awake. So did something else: anger. Not hot, screaming anger. Not the kind you throw dishes over. No, this was cold. Deep. Like a frozen lake under your skin. I thought about all the Christmas mornings I made special. The emergencies I helped them through. The times I drove 5 hours just to change a tire or deliver a forgotten laptop. I thought about how many times I heard, "You're the best, Dad," when they needed something, and how fast that praise dried up the moment I needed something in return. That was when I made the first decision. I was done. Done being their safety net. Done being the invisible mule that carried everything in silence. Done making excuses for grown adults who were perfectly capable of helping, just not willing. The next morning, I drove into town, slowly, with one hand on my ribs, and walked into my lawyer's office. Linda McCready had handled our estate for 20 years. Smart, sharp, no nonsense. I liked her because she never sugar-coated anything. When I walked in, she raised an eyebrow. "Michael Dunn," she said, "you look like hell." I nodded. "Fell in the barn." "Jesus. You all right?" "Not really. That's why I'm here." She motioned me in, and I told her plain and simple, I wanted to update my will. Pull back the trust. Revoke access. Freeze any automatic distributions. I wanted full control again. She sat back in her chair and looked at me for a long moment. "Something happened with the kids?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Nothing," I said. "That's the problem. We went over the documents. I signed what needed signing." She asked if I wanted to write a statement, something explaining my reasoning, in case things got ugly later. "They'll think you've lost it," she said. "Maybe even try to prove it." I nodded. "Let them try. I've got medical records. I've got receipts. And I've got a clear head for the first time in years." When I walked out of that office, the wind felt different. Like it wasn't trying to knock me over anymore, just remind me I was still standing. For years, I'd believed love was about sacrifice. And maybe it is, in part. But not sacrifice without return. Not love without respect. That night, I wrote 3 letters, one to each of my kids. Simple. Calm. Honest. I told them I loved them. That I always would. But from now on, they'd need to stand on their own 2 feet. No more checks. No more last-minute rescues. No more, "Dad'll fix it." I wasn't trying to punish them. I was just tired of pretending that being useful was the same as being valued. The first thing I sold was the 3rd field, the North Plot, the one near the tree line where Mary used to set up the old picnic table every 4th of July. That piece of land had good soil, but it also held the most memories. Letting it go hurt more than I expected. But it had to be done. I listed it through a local broker I trusted. No fanfare. No family heads up. Just a simple transaction. Within 2 weeks, it was sold to a young couple from Billings looking to start their own small farm. I met them once, handed over the original plot survey myself. The woman looked me in the eye and said, "We're gonna take good care of this land." I nodded and said, "That's all I ask." Next came the second tractor, the backup combine, and the small storage barn I'd been renting out to a neighbor. I cleaned out tools, scrap, old lumber, and memories. Every corner had some trace of Mary, her handwriting on storage labels, her gardening gloves still hanging on a rusted nail. I boxed it all up, kept what mattered, gave the rest away. It felt like cleaning out a version of myself I didn't need anymore. I didn't stop there. I shut down the family cell plan, canceled the automatic transfers to Sam's checking account, called Rebecca's bank and ended the co-signed agreement on her second mortgage. That one nearly got me laughed at, but the paperwork was in my favor. It all came down like falling dominoes, fast and final. I didn't owe them an explanation. I'd already given them decades of those. By the end of the month, I had liquidated over half the property, deposited a quiet but solid sum into a private account under my name only, and made arrangements to lease out the remaining acres to a neighboring farmer. A good man, younger than me, with honest hands and tired eyes. He reminded me of myself, years ago, before the weight of everyone else's lives bent me down. Word spread fast in small towns. It always does. I started getting messages. At first polite, curious. Then colder. From Rebecca. "Hey Dad. Just heard you sold the North Field. Everything okay?" Then John. "Can we talk? Not sure what's going on. This feels sudden." I ignored them. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just wanted peace, real peace, and I knew that any conversation now would be a negotiation disguised as concern. Then came Sam. He showed up in person, late one afternoon, half drunk, with that same bitter edge he always wore when things didn't go his way. He didn't knock, just barged in like it was still his right. "What the hell, Dad?" he snapped. "You cancel my rent payments without saying a word? You serious?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't even get up. "I'm not your bank, Sam." He laughed, sharp and nasty. "Wow. Real nice. You finally lose it? Or you just stop giving a damn?" I looked him square in the face and said what I'd been holding back for years. "I gave a damn every time you didn't. Every time you called at midnight, every time I covered for you. You don't get to act shocked now that I stopped letting you bleed me dry." He stared at me, stunned. Not angry, not yet. Just confused. Like I'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. Then he did what I expected. He threatened me. "You can't do this," he said. "We'll talk to someone. You're not well. You're acting crazy." There it was. The fallback card, make me the problem. If I wasn't endlessly generous, I must be mentally unstable. If I stopped being useful, I must be broken. But I was calm. So calm it scared him. "Do what you need to do, son. But make no mistake, I'm not confused. I'm finally clear." He left in a rage. Slammed the door so hard the window rattled. I didn't follow him. I didn't call after him. I just sat there, listening to the silence settle around me like dust. And for the first time in decades, I felt free. A week after Sam slammed that door, I packed a suitcase. Not because I was running, I'd done enough of that inside my own life. No, this time, I was moving forward. On purpose. For me. I'd already signed over the lease to the neighbor, Travis. Young guy, hardworking, with a wife and 2 little girls who waved at me every time they passed the gate. He didn't ask questions. Just shook my hand firm and said, "I'll take good care of it." I believed him. I loaded up the truck, just a few clothes, my tools, a framed photo of Mary from our fishing trip in 2003, and a journal I'd barely written in since she passed. I didn't bring anything from the kids. No photos. No mementos. It wasn't out of spite. I just realized I didn't need proof of the people who'd stopped showing up. I drove west, no real plan, just a direction. I stopped when I reached a quiet little lakeside town I'd passed through once with Mary, back before the cancer, back when we used to take weekend drives with no destination. The town hadn't changed much. Still had the same diner with the flickering sign, same hardware store with tools older than me, same wide blue lake that looked like it could hold all the noise I'd carried for years. I found a small cabin for rent. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, creaky porch, no central heat. But it had a screened-in back deck that looked out over the water, and when the wind hit just right, it sounded like someone whispering, "Breathe." I signed a year's lease that afternoon. The landlord, a retired teacher named Glenn, looked me up and down and said, "You here to fish or hide?" "Maybe both," I said, and we left it at that. I spent the first few days sleeping. I mean really sleeping. The kind where your bones feel heavy, like they're finally allowed to rest. No 5 a.m. alarms. No feed schedules. No text dings asking for favors. Just the sound of loons in the morning and crickets at night. I started cooking again, simple stuff, eggs and toast, stews that lasted for days. I read books I hadn't opened in years. Went fishing. Even bought a beat-up old guitar from a thrift shop and plucked at it like I had back in high school before responsibility became my full-time job. It felt like waking up after a long, hard winter. Nobody knew who I was here. Nobody cared how much land I used to own or how many mortgages I paid off for someone else. I was just a man with gray in his beard and time on his hands. And that's when I met her. Her name was Lynn. She ran the coffee shop near the lake, the brew shed. First time I walked in, I was still stiff from the drive. She smiled like we'd known each other for years. "Let me guess," she said. "Black coffee, nothing fancy." I nodded. You can always spot a man who's had to make it himself too many mornings. She laughed. It was soft, warm, real. I came back the next day. Then again the next. We didn't talk much at first. She was busy, I was cautious. But over time, we started sharing little things. Weather complaints, local gossip, memories of old dogs and stubborn tractors. One afternoon she asked, "So what brings you here?" I looked at her and said, "Freedom." She didn't pry. Just nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. Because Lynn never once asked what I used to own. Never assumed I had money. Never looked at me like a problem to solve or a favor to request. She just talked to me like I was a man. Not a provider. Not a savior. Just a man. And after everything I'd been through, that felt like the purest kind of love. It was around mid-November when they came for me. All three of them, John, Rebecca, and Sam, showed up at the cabin like they were staging some kind of intervention. I don't know how they found the address. Maybe Linda, my lawyer, let something slip. Or maybe Sam followed the lease trail. Either way, they parked just off the gravel drive and came stomping up the porch like they still had a right to be there. I was sitting on the back deck, coffee in hand, watching the lake catch the late afternoon light. It was one of those rare, still days when the water's like glass and the wind doesn't say a word. I heard the car doors slam. Then the voices. Low at first. Then climbing. Rebecca knocked, sharp and quick. "Dad, we need to talk." I didn't move. She knocked again. "We know you're in there." I set my coffee down and stood slowly. My ribs still ached now and then, but I was stronger. Calmer. Quieter on the inside. I opened the door. Didn't smile. John started in immediately. "What the hell is going on with you?" Rebecca jumped in. "We're worried, Dad. You disappeared. You're selling off the farm. You cut us out of everything. That's not normal behavior." Sam, arms crossed, added with a smirk, "You losing it out here or something?" That one made me laugh, not out loud, but somewhere deep behind my eyes. The irony of it. After everything. I stepped aside. "You want to talk? Come on in." They walked in like strangers, uncomfortable, unsure of the space. The cabin was simple, wood paneling, a single couch, books stacked in corners, firewood near the stove. No family photos. No reminders of the old life. I didn't offer them anything. They stood in a half-circle, looking at me like I was a loaded gun on a table. Rebecca went first. "Dad, we know you've been through a lot. Losing Mom, the farm, getting older. We just think maybe you're not seeing things clearly. Selling off everything like this, cutting us off financially, it's not like you." I nodded slowly. "You're right. It's not like I used to be." John stepped forward. "We talked to Linda. We know you revoked the trust. It's dangerous, Dad. Irresponsible. What if something happens to you?" "That's the first time you've asked that," I said. They went quiet. Then Sam, of course, went for the low blow. "We could get a court order. You know that, right? If we think you're mentally compromised. You don't look well. Living out here like a hermit. Dating some barista. It's pathetic." I stepped forward, close enough for him to see the lines in my face. "Go ahead," I said. "Try it. Take me to court. You think a judge is going to rule against a man with a clean bill of health, a notarized will, and decades of financial records showing every single cent he gave his children while they gave nothing back?" Sam opened his mouth, closed it, John looked away. Rebecca, her eyes welled up. I just don't understand, Dad. We're your family. No, I said, gently. You're people I used to give everything to. But the second I needed something, you vanished. That's not fair, she whispered. I nodded. Maybe. But it's true. There was a long pause, the kind that feels like a chasm opening up in the floor. I looked at them one by one. I'm not angry anymore, I said. But I'm not going back. I've given you all more than I ever gave myself. And now, I'm giving myself the time and peace I should have claimed years ago. You're choosing her over us? Sam snapped. I shook my head. No. I'm choosing me. They left not long after. No hugs. No apologies. No real closure. Just silence, the same kind they'd given me when I was lying in a hospital bed wondering why nobody came. And you know what? That silence didn't hurt this time. It felt like a door finally, blessedly closing. They didn't take it well. The next morning, I woke up to a phone full of messages. Not one from the kids. Just noise, cousins, in-laws, even some of my sister-in-law's church friends. Word had gotten around fast, and the narrative was already spinning. Apparently, I was losing it. Isolating. Under the influence of some woman I barely knew. A few said I was abandoning my family. One message even asked if I'd been coerced. That one made me laugh out loud. Nobody coerces a man like me. Not anymore. I ignored all of it. Rebecca tried the guilt route next. She sent me a long, carefully worded email. It had everything. We love you, we're worried, this isn't who you are, Mom would be disappointed. She even attached a list of the emotional damage I was causing by cutting them off financially. I read every word. Then I deleted it. John got more aggressive. He called Linda, my lawyer, twice in one day. Demanded to know if I was mentally competent. Asked if she'd been manipulated. She shut that down immediately. Told him I'd passed every mental check, had full legal control of all my affairs, and had documented reasons for every financial change. He didn't like that answer. Sam just sent one text. You'll regret this. We're your blood. No. They were my habit. There's a difference. I spent a few days thinking about what might come next, legal action, maybe, or public shaming. But nothing came. Because deep down, they knew. They knew I'd kept records. That I'd never once said no without giving something else instead. That the real embarrassment wasn't me disappearing, it was them realizing the only thing they'd lost was the man they depended on, not the man they loved. Lynn knew something was going on. She didn't ask for details. One night, as we sat on the porch sipping tea, she said, "You seem lighter." I looked out at the water and said, "I think I finally stopped begging people to care." She nodded. Just like that. No advice. No sermon. Just understanding. We spent more and more time together, slow, quiet days. Walks. Fishing. A weekend trip to a farmer's market in another town where nobody knew either of us. I bought her a pair of handmade earrings. She made me laugh so hard one morning I spilled coffee all over my shirt, and she just said, "That's the kind of mess I like." One day, I told her the whole story. The fall in the barn. The kid's silence. The hospital room. The selling of the land. The confrontation. She listened. Really listened. When I finished, I asked her, "Do you think I went too far?" She smiled and shook her head. "I think you finally drew a line." I nodded. "It just took 62 years. Better late than never," she said, reaching for my hand. That was the moment I realized something. The life I used to protect so fiercely, the land, the family image, the role of the provider, wasn't really mine. It was something I inherited. Something I performed. But this life, with its simple mornings, real conversations, and love without a price tag, this was mine. Let them be angry. Let them call me selfish. Let them talk. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living to be remembered as a good man. I was just living.